Hi, I'm Preston Williams, and welcome to another edition of Jazz Talk. Today on our show, we have with us one of the most prolific musicians around. This gentleman has been on the scene for over 50 years and has worked with many greats from Dolly Parton to Earth, Wind, and Fire, Barbra Streisand, Marvin Gaye, the Jackson 5, Steely Dan, David Foster, to name a few. He is a two-time Grammy Award-winning guitarist, composer, arranger, record producer. He does it all. Please welcome to the show the legendary Mr. Jay Graydon. Sir,
No,
welcome.
thank you. Really. Really, thank you. No.
Man, listen, thanks again so much for being on the show today. I look at you as an icon in the music industry. You've basically worked with everyone, but I'm interested in knowing more about your humble beginnings, Jay. I understand that you're from California. You were born in Burbank, California. You grew up in that area?
Yes, I grew up
Okay.
in North Hollywood and Burbank.
Mhm.
And yeah, man, fortunately, I'm not one of the cats that had to move here from somewhere else. My father was in the business and he had a bunch of TV shows in LA. And the one in from a show from 1949 was kinescoped. And I have a copy and I had it tweaked and cleaned up by UCLA Film TV Archive. And it's on my website. It's a 13-minute show. It's an early variety show. And
I
it's
wanted to
pretty
ask you
cool.
about that, man. I wanted to ask you about that. You were like 2 years old. I understand that you made your singing debut on your dad's show. And at the time, from what I understand, your dad was the only one in the area that even had a talk music show like that. The first, actually.
It was. It was a variety show. And um, the one on my second birthday, the story with that one is I have audio. Somebody had recorded it on a wire recorder off TV,
Mm.
then had it transferred to 78s, and I have the 78s.
Oh,
And
wow.
on the very first song of the Bebop album, you'll hear a segment when my dad asked me what kind of music I like. And I told him bebop.
Wow.
So on the Bebop album, it starts the album. And fortunately, my dad got to hear it. I got to hear the whole album before he passed. And of course, he dug the fact that I used the TV show for the intro.
Wow. Wow. Now, Jay,
Yeah,
how did you get involved in music anyway? Because what I understand growing up, I guess one of your first instruments was drums.
it was. I first started out as I was going to be a professional bowler. I was totally into it. I was
Wow.
practicing as much as I could.
Yeah.
And by the time I was 13, I averaged 201 in a junior league, which back there was really, if you could average 200 on the lane conditions and the bowling balls that we had back then, that was big.
Yeah.
And thank God I made the switch to music because a career in bowling it doesn't pay well. And it's
Right.
funny, I keep in contact with all my old buddies that are in the Hall of Fame. And
Hmm.
anyway, so I went to a junior high dance in ninth grade and I heard a surf band and I was fascinated. And first I wanted to play drums. I don't know why, just out of nowhere. So I used to, at 12 years old and 13 years old, I was, gambling from bowling. I would bowl guys for money. And I learned quick to only bowl guys I could beat. And one of those guys was Mike Winkleman from the Real McCoys.
Oh, wow.
He played Little Luke. He used to come in a Magnolia Bowl once a week, and I'd basically take his $20 allowance from him. But I feel bad about that now because can you believe a hustler at that age? Anyway, so I saved up enough money to buy a set of drums, and I did. And two guys in my junior high school played guitar. And I said, well, let's get together and jam. And so we did at my mom's house, and they left their guitars that night because we had so much fun. We were going to do it the next day. I picked up one of the guitars and I figured out all the tunes that we'd played that day on guitar. And I
Mm.
go, well, maybe I should be a guitar player. So I went out and bowled guys, bowled a bunch of more guys for money until I had $350 and I bought a Fender Stratocaster. And that was the beginning. And then then I was addicted, man. And whatever I get into, I'm an extremist. And here that was it, man. From then on, music owned me, thankfully.
So basically, Jay, are you self-taught?
Yes.
Oh,
But
wow.
then I studied with a guy named Ted Green, who is just an outstanding guitarist. And poor Ted passed when he was 59.
Mm,
Great teacher, great player. He changed my life. I was about 21 when I studied with Ted.
mm.
And other than that, I learned a lot from other guitarists, other musicians. And when I got into college, I was in the big band and in college, and I really picked up a lot of information there. And it was a great networking system because we were all trying to stay out of the army. It was during Vietnam,
Hmm.
and it was incredible players. So it changed my life, man. I just was in the perfect spot to learn all the time for some reason. And, and I did a lot of self-teaching. I taught myself how to read, and I studied music theory. I started figuring out stuff on my own. And that's the basic story.
That's incredible. Now, Jay, how did you make that transition into becoming a studio musician? Because I guess late '60s on, you just started working with some big names. But how did you make that transition into just self-taught musician, learning, I guess, from people, learning how to read music? How did you get to that point to become a studio musician?
Well, I the second I found out what a studio musician was, when I was probably 16, 15 or 16,
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's really a great job. You get to play all kinds of different music all the time, and it pays really well. So during college, there was a guy named Ray Jackson, a trombone player who was a great arranger, and he was a great cat, man. And he's a black cat. I think he passed away sadly.
Mm,
But I'd been playing funk. I'd been listening to James Brown, and I was
mm.
learning all those tunes. So he was doing a bunch of demos for a guy, and he hired me. And ironically, the drummer was Al McKay, who ended up
Oh,
being the guitarist in Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Rhythm
Then,
King.
then Al switched to guitar, and then it was both of us playing guitars on these dates. And Al, I haven't talked to him in a long time. I owe him a phone call. What a great cat, and what a great player. But anyway, so we were doing these record dates, these demo sessions for Ray, and then little by little, I started getting more work, for demos. And then I got in the Don Ellis band when I was around 19
Yeah.
through Glenn Ferris, who was another excellent trombone player in the big band in college. And Glenn recommended me, and Don was, looking for a guitarist. So when I got into his band, one of the first things we did was make an album. Now, that
Mm,
was all odd time music, and that was brand new to me. But I figured out how to deal with it. I figured out everything's divided in twos and threes. We'll get into that more in a bit. But we did an album with Don. We were working all the time. I was working club gigs starting when I was 16. So
wow.
I was always playing. And the transition from being in Don's band, a lot of those guys in the band were doing record dates, and the networking, they recommended me, I recommended them, and it just started to happen. So by the early 70s, I lucked into being a first call guitarist. you
Mm.
know, Rhythm guitar is the key to studio work. That's 90% of it. And if you've got a good feel and you can, work with the drummer's groove, work with the drummer's pocket, and work with the rhythm section as a whole and find that pocket they're playing in and play with them, that's the key. And then the taste factor comes in, and, you never want to overplay. You're always trying to find parts that work, that, fit the groove. Less is more,
Yes,
you
less
know
is more.
you really try to find parts that complement the song. It's not the Jay Graydon record, it's somebody else's record. And my job is to play rhythm or single note muted parts, or, solos when they're called for, or fills. And then we have the movie dates where there's a lot of reading.
Mm.
And I never ran into a session that I couldn't play, but I really didn't dig movies, man, because it's like punching a time clock. And also the dates started at 8 and 9 in the morning, and it was hard enough to make it to 10 o'clock record dates, being the nocturnal guy that I am.
Yeah.
And so movie dates didn't do it for me. But there was so much work back then that I didn't need the movie dates. I was working 20 sessions a week and over 5 days, 4 a day, literally for years.
Mm.
And one week I fit in 28 sessions. I also took work on a Saturday because I had 4 sessions in between the 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock sessions. In other words, 10 to 1, 2 to 5, that was a double session, or they could be in different studios. And then usually 7 to 1 in the morning. So between the 5 and 7, I worked for a guy named Michael Lloyd a lot. And I had him get me the identical amp setup and effects setup that I had. So I'd just walk into a studio, I'd call him and say, Michael, I'm leaving the 5 o'clock session. I'll be right over. And in 15 minutes, I play the solo and I'm out of there. And that happened 4 times in 1 week.
Mm.
So just for laughs, I just wanted to see how many dates I could do in 6 days. Kind of stupid, but
That's incredible, man. And just some of the names that you worked with. I mean, let me ask you this. Initially, in the beginning, when you were working with a lot of these big artists, were you starstruck, Jay? Working with like a Barbara Streisand or the Jackson Five and, people like that. Lou Rawls, Diane.
a little bit, a
Yeah.
little bit in the beginning, but just a little bit. And after a while, that wore off. They're just people like anyone else,
Yeah.
and they were always what I liked about them was the fact they would compliment me on what I played.
Mm.
So they know the importance of a studio musician versus a road musician. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in a bit, but they were always complimentary. Every once in a while, there'd be a star with an attitude problem, and I just avoid it. I'd avoid them. I'd just make sure to not get in their way. They, so that sometimes the ego was out of control, but for the
Yeah.
most part, they were all good people.
Yeah.
Especially now, a lot of people think Barbara Streisand's
I
a
was about to
real.
ask you about her if she was very
Yeah, I
demanding.
mean, well, Foster produced her, so Foster's dealing with her on a different level at that point, and she can be demanding. And I know a lot of guys that work with her on a more of a personal level, like being in their road band or whatever. But
Mhm.
like I say, on the sessions, it's a quick marriage with an annulment at the end. For 3 or 6 hours, you're with them,
Yeah.
and they're digging the musicianship of us studio guys. And they always enjoyed it because we're giving them something they loved. We're doing our best to make the record as good as we can.
Yeah.
So, she wasn't a problem ever, never. Dolly, nice, man, nice, and one of the guys.
Yeah.
She was, yeah. I mean, she's really what you see on TV and hear from her on TV. That's the same person, you know, and the same. I mean, name almost any artist, and they're pretty much the same people, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But Dolly is one of the guys. She must have grown up around a bunch of guys, and she just acts like one of the guys.
Yeah, she comes off as very, very sweet. I wanted
Oh
to ask
yeah,
you. I
man.
wanted to ask you about your long association with David Foster. How'd you guys meet and start working together?
Yeah, this is good. So I was working a club gig. It was called the Etc. Club, and it was
Mhm.
across the street from A&M Studios in Hollywood. It was on La Brea, right near Hollywood Boulevard. And by the way, the A&M Studios were originally Charlie Chaplin's studio.
Really?
And
Oh,
yeah, and there's a slow-mo of that building being built. You can find it online. It's really cool. And what's really bizarre is the building never looked old. I mean, the design doesn't look old even now. And so anyway, The Eccentric Club was across the street, and it was, let's say, run by the boys. You know what I mean? Um, it was run by some guys that I'm trying to find a word to play it as safe as I can. Well, let's say they would take turns going to jail. You know what I mean? Okay. And I got a great story about that before we get to David. I can't believe I did this, man. So I'm 21 when I'm working this gig. We were working with Maxine Weldon. And what was cool about this gig is, other than the 2 shows we did with her a night, we had 3 blowing sets, meaning we played jazz. Great band always. Greg Matheson on piano. I got Greg on the gig. Ralph Humphrey on drums. I got Ralph on the gig. Dick McDaniel, great bass player. I got him on the gig. There was guys coming through, but we lasted for a while, and we got to blow in between the sets. So, and also, man, the place was loaded with pimps, and it was like, it was a Hollywood place. All the Hollywood stars showed up, right?
Mhm.
So, this is really funny, man. We played a little loud. I mean, we got excited. We were young. When we were building our solos, we'd start soft, and then with a more intense energy as we're building our solos, playing jazz, it could get loud. And Mike, one of the 3 owners, it was Mike, Steve, and I think Bill was the other guy. And basically, like I say, they basically traded off going away for a period of time. So one day during a rehearsal, Mike comes up to me and he says, Jay, the place was jammed every night to the rafters. I mean, it's a dinner house and it was packed, and there'd be a turnover at least once. And Mike came up to me and said, Jay, you guys are playing a little loud. I'm getting a little, some complaints from some of the people. Do you think you could bring down the volume a little bit? And I'm 21. I put my arm around Mike, and I'm walking him through the club, and I go, Mike, when you're right, you're right. I agree with you, man. We shouldn't be playing loud like that. I get it. People are eating dinner. I never told anybody in the band. Okay. So 2 weeks later, Mike comes up to me again and says, Jay, can you guys please turn down? I'm getting a few complaints. I said, Mike, the place is jammed every night. I mean, you couldn't fit more people in here if you tried. So, but I understand, right? I didn't tell the guys, right? This happened the 3rd time. And the 3rd time it happened, he started walking up to me, and he just started laughing, and he turned away and walked away. He knew the people were digging the band.
Right.
They were digging us. The majority of the people was packed all the time.
Yeah.
So how could you deny it, right? It was just part of the vibe.
Mhm.
So anyway, David Foster happened to show up. During the breaks, we usually go in the back, and some guys may be smoking reefer. And David walked up to me and said hello. And I was just in the middle of a conversation with somebody else, and I kind of gave him the shine. I said, yeah, nice to meet you, man. Nice to meet you. And then I basically went back to this conversation. Well, he came in a couple of days later and said, hey, man, I want to hire you for a record date. Now he's got my attention.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, man. And so I remember the date being at Clover, and I showed up to the date, and he plays the song. I'm listening to the song in the control room. And I said, who's the piano player? He said, I am. I said, you and I are going to be really good friends. And from then on, we started helping each other. We got each other on sessions all the time. Second, somebody would call me for a session, I said, I've got a piano player for you.
Wow.
You're going to want. And he'd do the same for me. And then we started writing, and we were doing demos in my home studio. By the way, this is my studio, 3rd version of my home studios. But the studio back then was a little 4-track. And, I had some kind of little studio. And so we were writing, and we were demoing up. And we got some tunes recorded, and that's how we also got the airplay deal for for our band Airplay. So
Yeah.
we'll get into that in a minute. But that's how I met David. And like I say, we became like brothers. We were around each other all the time. And there's so many stories that come off of our collaborations. For example, David was at Motown, Motown, pitching an album he produced on J.P. Morgan that was done with the studio owner of Sound Cities with his money. So he was playing a song for the A&R people, and he couldn't remember the chorus. And he ad-libbed what turned out to be the chorus to After the Love Is Gone or After the Love Has Gone. And I'll tell you that story in a sec. So David called me. We didn't have cell phones then. He got home and he called me. He said, I got a chorus for a song that's killer. He said, I'm coming over. Now I'm in my next studio, which was the beginning of a pro studio. This was in a house in Studio City. And he came over and he played me the chorus. And I said, man, wow, that's a great chorus. So I picked up the guitar and I came up with the first 8 bars of the verse right away. And then we started working on the B section together. And a lot of times I become David's editor because he's so fast and so creative. By the time I've got an idea, he's got 3 more. So sometimes I'd slip in my idea and go, let's try this. Or I would just edit and go, no, hold on a sec. That's great. But let's try this chord change there.
Right.
And you go, okay, cool. We banged the song out, what, an hour and a half? And then David got the gig to work with Maurice White on the I Am album. And the first night he met Maurice, he played the song for Maurice. And Maurice said, I want to cut it. And Foster called me up when he got home and he said, listen, man, he was producing Bill Champlin, the Runaway album, I think it was at the time.
Bill Champlin from Chicago. Yeah.
Yes, but he wasn't in Chicago yet. And by the way, David got Bill in Chicago. That's another story when we get to it. Hey, man, I've got stories for 1,000 hours, and then I'll start getting into the other ones I remember that I've forgotten. Anyway, okay, so David says, man, I feel bad about calling Bill and telling him we can't use the song on his record, because the rule back then was, if somebody's got a hold on a song and it's a major artist, you can't record it yourself. Only one artist can record it. People broke that rule all the time. And I'll give you an example of that with the Dolly Parton song, Here We Come Again. Remind me to tell you the story, because that does break the rule, but I don't want to blow the thought train here.
Okay.
So David says, will you call up Bill? And I said, yeah, man. So I said, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. I called Bill and I said, David played the song for Maurice. He says, I know what you're going to say. We can't use it on my record. And I said, yep. He says, I'm not an idiot, He said, what? He knew that we had to do this. And that's what happened. But Bill and I finally did record a version with Bill on my album, Jay Graydon, Airplay for the Planet. And it's very important to note that people that listen to the Earth, Wind, and Fire version think that the harmony part in the chorus is the melody, and it's not. The high harmony part in the chorus is a harmony part. But when they mix the song, they crank Philip, who sang the high part, they crank his part up louder than Maurice's melody. So everybody thinks that's the melody. So if you listen to my version on the Airplay for the Planet album, you'll hear what the melody's supposed to be. And Bill and I we both like that version. Foster played
that's some good trivia that Earth, Wind, and Fire fans will definitely love to hear, because they have a page devoted to this stuff. So that's stuff that they're going to want to hear. But I wanted to ask you, because David,
I got to finish the story, Preston. All right. Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, please continue.
I'm 71 and I'm forgetful, so I don't want to forget because this is important. Okay. So let's move on. I already forgot.
Oh
It'll
man,
come
I'm
back.
sorry.
No,
Hopefully it'll
don't
come
worry
back.
about it.
But
Don't worry about it,
but
man. Don't worry about it.
I wanted to ask you. David has always said, you know, his career really began with Earth, Wind, and Fire, and you know how he feels about them. They're like his all-time favorite group. But you guys won a Grammy for that, man. That's awesome. What was that like winning your first Grammy for writing that tune?
I actually won 2.5 Grammys, and we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, great story. So we were up for both Pop Song of the Year and R&B Song of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
And we won R&B Song of the Year, and that's pre-record. We're still in the Grammys, you know. They do a scroll of still pictures of who won what,
Mm-hmm.
and it's David and I, and Bill's not there. Bill ran up about 5 minutes after we did our bit, and we're walking off. Bill's running up to the stage. I said, "What happened?" He said, "Oh man, I forget the reason why." But the same thing happened when we won the Grammy for Turn Your Love Around. It was a
Yeah.
pre-award. Lukather and I went up there. Bill's not in the picture, and he's running up the aisle right when we're done. 2 times in a row that happened. Anyway, how was it? Let's see. How about the biggest honor that can be paid to be bestowed on songwriters? You know, I mean, man, it felt absolutely wonderful. You know, then
Yeah.
when we were nominated for Pop Song of the Year as well, and I forgot who won. Was it Kenny Loggins and Mike McDonald? I don't remember. But anyway, man, a Grammy's a Grammy, and you know, a great honor, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 12. You nominated 12 times, which is
Yes.
incredible. And but you also won, as you mentioned, your second one with George Benson, "Turn Your Love Around." Great song. And you know, even getting back to Earth, Wind, and Fire real quick, you guys actually, you know, hit them when they were really at their height, because Earth, Wind, and Fire were one of the top bands in the world, like mid 70s, like 78, 79. So that was incredible. And yeah, working with George Benson as well was incredible winning that. But it's one particular gentleman I want to talk to you about. He's probably one of my all-time favorite artists, the late Al Jarreau. What a voice. Let me tell you, Jay, your work with him on This Time and Breaking Away, This Time is probably my personal favorite, and I can hear your work on that, like those songs, Give Me What You Got, and Alonzo, and Love Is Real. I mean, what an incredible recording. Spain and Breaking Away, probably 2 of his best recordings, man. What was it like working with Al Jarreau?
Did you didn't include the Jarreau album titled
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Jarreau?
Oh, yeah, Morning. It's funny that you mentioned
That's
the
my
Jarreau album.
favorite.
Yeah, yeah.
That one and Breaking Away is my favorite. Then I did a half of another album. Or no.
Was it Ella's for Lover or for Hearts Horizon?
Hearts Horizon, but then I did High Crime
High
between
Crime.
Jarreau and that.
High
Okay.
Crime.
Al Jarreau. Obviously a one-of-a-kind guy.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, you know, he could make any sound. Like he could do a flute. He could sound like a flute player.
Yeah.
You know, he had all these different things he could mime. And I said, "Al, how do you do the flute thing?" And he taught me. I forgot what he did, but he had the perfect way to step me through it. There was a few other things he did, and I asked him the same. And you know, he was, man, Al was great. First of all, I worked every singer hard.
Yeah.
They'll all tell you I put him through the mill. And the reason I did that is because I'm a perfectionist. I want it to feel great, and I want it to be musical. You know, I don't want it overly tight. I want it tight, but not for the sake of messing with the feel. So when I arranged these tunes, Jerry always did the horns. You know, I always tried to come up with hip chord changes and real nice transitions to have a real good track for Al to sing on. And, you know, like I would record 7 tracks. And then I'll tell you exactly how I did it. You'll like this.
Okay.
All right, where did I put it? All right, hold on one sec.
Take your time.
Preston, hold on. There's one more thing
No,
I'm
it's
looking
okay.
for.
Take your time, my friend. This is good stuff.
You're going to love this thing when I tell you what it does.
Oh, wow.
This was a big part of that. Hold on.
Okay.
There's a pad of paper I'm looking for. I know, I have a good feeling I know where it is. Hold on.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, let me get a little organized here.
Okay.
I'm going to light up a tube.
This
on
is
the
exciting.
side.
This is exciting, man. I love this.
I've got a lot of stuff to tell you, Preston. Don't forget to ask me how Turn Your Love Around was written.
Oh, for sure. We may even have to do two parts to this because, like I said, a lot of these interviews that I'm doing with musicians, there's so much info to cover. You just can't do it in one session. So we may have to do a second session as well. This is
Not
good.
a problem. And by
Yeah.
the way, I'm going to start a teaching channel soon
Oh,
in about
wow.
4 months.
Okay.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do an interview with Rick Beato to really pitch it in about, I don't know, 3 weeks. And then, but I want to pitch that. And, you know, and if you can also stream my site, that would be great. And, you know, at some point, www.jaygraydon.com, because we want people to find me so they can see when this stuff finally shows up when I start doing it.
Definitely.
Okay. So here's what's happening. When I would record vocals, I have a column over here. Now you can see there's 5 lines going vertically and lines going horizontally, right? Forget all the chicken scratch up and top, but right here, I wrote a lyric. I just wrote down some words and I put a number over them, and I'll explain that. So the very first line says, this is the first line of the vocal. And you can see above it that I have the number 7 on the beginning word, right? And then you see another number. Can you read this? Can you see it good enough?
I can see it. I can see it.
Okay. Each one of these numbers represents the track on the tape machine of the line that I used from the 7 tracks I would record with a singer. Okay. So wherever you see the number change would be what I selected from grades I gave the track over here. So when Al was singing, for example, you can see that I had, what did I have for the first one? 8, 9, 9.5, 9, and 10. So you can see those numbers there, 8, 9, 9.5, 9, and 10. And what that meant was a 9.5 or a 10 was a great performance. And as I was doing the vocals with Al and any singer, I would see the numbers. And when I had all 9s, 9.5s, and 10s filled up on all 7 tracks, there's only 5 here now, but I have 7. And then I knew that I had all great stuff to do a combine to a master vocal track. Wow. So these are individual tracks on the 24-track tape machine. You understand? So I, like, for example, the first track is track 3, then 4 and 5, 6, 7. Right. So on the tape machine, I'd start, let's say, with track 3. So I have Al sing the tune all the way up to the chorus. And then when I keep good track of the numbers for each line as I'm going. Then after I record that track, if I have some good numbers, I keep it. Then we go to track 4. I do it again. He sings it. I give grades for each line. Then you see, I do it in next, the next line, so forth, the next line. I fill up all 7 tracks. And if I have some 8s, a lot of 8s, I'll go back and I'll punch in those lines. I'll
Hmm.
have Al sing it and I'll punch in and then punch out where I have a score like an 8. And
Ah,
then, well, like I say, when I have all 9s, 9.5s, and 10s, I know I have great stuff to do a master vocal combine.
interesting.
Everybody has their style of doing it. This was mine.
Interesting.
So, and I would work them hard, man. So anyway, we would sing the tune up to the chorus, and then I'd go back and fill in areas on different tracks that didn't have great numbers until I had all great numbers. Now we're all the way, the verse and the B section is done. Now we do the choruses. Then we come back and we do the next verse and B section, and then we do the next chorus. The reason I do it in sections like that is his voice is going to change. I don't want
Hmm.
him to sing the tune all the way down
Okay.
and then start from the beginning again. It's going to sound different. He's in a flow and in a vibe for the verse. When we get to the chorus, he's stepping on the gas a little bit. We go back to the verse and B section, he's cooling out a little bit. And of course, I'm directing him all the way through this. I'd say, Al, please try to phrase the line like this. And if we were having a problem with a line or so, I'd say, little flat there. And you're usually singing it flat. So just keep in the back of your mind, just remember that the two words here are usually flat, kind of. So just keep that in mind when we punch in. And I give them instructions like this as we go,
That's
right?
incredible.
Right. It's very methodical. And it's my style, okay? I don't know if anybody else did the exact same style I did, but this is what I did. Now,
Jay, that's incredible. I'm thinking about, because like I said, I think Al's best stuff was when he worked with you. I mean, that was a turning point. A few of the things that he did in the 70s, and of course, that live jazz album, he did Look to the Rainbow. But once he started with This Time On, I could see a change. And the music, the production, the songwriting, everything was better. It was actually the best stuff that he had ever done.
I thank you for that, man, and I'm
Yeah.
proud of it.
Yeah.
Jerry Hay also says it's his best work too.
Oh, without question.
I'd work those guys hard, man. And then Chuck Finley used to say to me, Jay, what was wrong with that last pass? And I said, there was nothing wrong with your part, Chuck. It was somebody else typically, but
Yeah.
that's a whole other story. And I'll tell you how we did the horns later. That's a whole other technique. But man, look, like I say, I'm a perfectionist, and I always hired great rhythm sections and I wrote the charts out. Well, let's show you a chart.
You still have the original charts?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And I would write out of a lot of this stuff in a very complete mode. For example, there's a song that Rich Page and Steve George wrote called My Old Friend.
Oh yeah,
It's
I love that
on,
song. That's from Breaking
you like
Away.
that song?
Love that song.
Can you see the chart?
Wow, that's the original chart?
Yeah.
Man, you keep your stuff in pristine shape. Wow. Because that's like from 1981, if I'm not mistaken.
I have all the rhythm charts. I have everything. And you can see this chart. The piano part's very complicated in the top stave. You can see it. I write everything out, man, pretty much. So anyway,
Oh,
here, I'll show you a couple of more. Here's Turn Your Love Around.
oh wow.
And let's go
Wow.
through it real slow. I'm going to put, you know what? These charts are up on my site. If they're not, I'm going to get Kirsten to put them up.
That'd be a good idea. Yeah.
You know
That was
what? It is a good idea. I just realized, wait a minute, I have to do that on my teaching channel, on my educational channel.
man, what a great tune. Whew.
Yeah, man. Dig how long Twilight Zone Twilight Tone is.
Wow. Amazing. Wow, look at that. That's
Not
incredible.
done. Well, let me start over here and get this song 6 minutes long.
Oh wow. I tell you, Jay, a lot of people would like to get their hands on that.
I
Wow.
gave one of these to an old bowling buddy of mine that's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday.
Uh-huh.
And I said, don't ever lose this, man, because if my house burns down, I want a copy.
Yeah, you need to
Of
take
course,
those and lock them up or put them away somewhere, man. Have copies of that stuff because that, whew.
I started taking pictures of them, but now that I think about it, you've got me thinking, man. I'm gonna take pictures of all of them and put them up on my educational
Oh,
teaching
you
site.
definitely have to do that. Yeah, that's some great stuff there. Oh, wow.
Now
Wow.
this is Morning, and I started this song with the guitar part. We
Mm-hmm.
were at Foster's house. I'll show you where the guitar part is, and I'll leave it up here.
You know,
Now
Jay,
this is
I
the
was,
way it was played, huh?
I was just going to say real quick, it's so funny that you brought that tune up because I actually put the lyrics of that song up on my Facebook page and people loved it. It says, oh man, I remember that song. And that was such a beautiful tune, man. It just makes you feel good, when you hear it.
Remind me to tell you how we got the last line of the bridge. Yeah, that's a whole other story. We're going to get to that in a second. But anyway, if you wanted to be a studio musician and you can't read this, then you're not ready to be a studio musician. So that's a key.
Yeah.
And man, I really wrote out complete charts. Okay, now we change things on the sessions, but let's go back to the vocals for a second.
Okay.
I'm going to show you something. Hit a fake beer. Almost ready.
It's all good, man.
Just edit the stuff out, Preston,
It's all a part of the interview, man.
Yep. You may even get a two-parter out of this one.
Oh, definitely. We're going to have to do this in a couple of parts because there's so much, to go over and all the prolific artists that you've worked with. Oh, wow. What is this? Come on, talk to me.
Okay. Now, when you're recording vocals after you've recorded the vocal and you're going to comp them, meaning I'm taking 7 tracks of vocal comps that I've done, and they have to be comped to another track on the tape machine. So when I play back the tape machine, and let's go back to the lyric sheet again for a sec.
Okay.
So let me look at it now and see what I got. 7, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. So you can see that where I have these words labeled, that would be the track that I'm going to use from the original vocal tracks, from the 7 original vocal tracks. But when I'm punching them in on the master combined vocal track, if there's no space between the words, you can't punch an analog and have it sound right. You can't make tight punches. There has to be a little tiny hole.
Yeah.
And that pissed me off because I'd have to find other places in the line to switch the punch point, and I would end up having to use a word or two that I didn't like the performance of, that was out of tune or something, a little out of tune. So I had my tech of the era, Ian Eales, who's David Foster's brother-in-law, who worked for me for years. He's brilliant. I said, Ian, I want you to build me a stereo fader that I can plug 2 tracks into. Let's say we plug track 3 into one side of it, and we plug track 4 into the other side of this stereo fader. Now, and then we take the output of this fader and we stick it into the input of track 14 for the vocal comp. So when I fade this fader, if I faded it slower, really slow, you'd hear the 2 vocals cross each other. And now one starts fading out and the other's fading up. Okay. Now it's one track now is all you're hearing. In this case, let's say it's 3 and 4. In this position, I'm going to get what's recorded on track 3 sent to track 14 on the machine. And when I'm in this mode, I get track 4 sent to track 14 on the machine. Okay. So if I do it this fast, you're not going to hear any problem. between the two words, at the end of one word, the beginning of the next word, where I'm making the transition. Because doing like this, it's lightning fast.
Right.
So I could make impossible punches this way. Okay, then this is the next iteration. So on the top, I have track 3 pressed down. I've got room for 9 different tracks. So I've got track 3 pressed on the top. That means when the fader's over here, I'm going to get the vocal from track 3 outputted to the input of track 14 for the vocal comp track.
Okay.
Now, the next move is track 6. I'd written that on that sheet as an example. Now, when I want to make the move, right at the point, just a microsecond before Al sings that word coming up, bam, bam, I slide it over. You don't hear the two vocals crossing each other on the two different tracks because it's instantaneous. Bam, you dig? Okay. Then let's say the next move is on track 5. So while I'm over here on track 6, I know that because of my lyric sheet, after I make the map, I know that's the next track I want the vocal from. So once again, when it's time, bam. Now let's say the next track's on track 4. When it's time, bam. So I keep the tape machine rolling and I'm looking at my notes and I keep hitting buttons of the destination. So whatever the destination is for the next track, I'm ready to go before we get there. Bam, next destination, bam, next destination, bam, on and on. So I could pull off impossible punching in issues that you could do no other way. Now, everybody, I tell my friends everything. I told everyone about the box and Ian was building them for everyone. Foster, the second,
do me a
the
favor,
first,
could you hold just for a moment? I have an important call coming in. I'm sorry. Hold just for a
go.
moment. We're back. Okay.
All right. So the summary of the vocal splicer box is, for example, when I have track 3 selected at the top, that's on my right over here. Okay.
Okay.
And then when I slam it to the left, that's track 6. Okay. So if you follow the path, they both go to the output that inputs on track 14. So when it's on this side, this track is going that route to track 14. When I slam the fader to the other side, you can see that track comes up and is the output to track 14. I know this is technical. If this is too
I
much,
like this. This is good stuff. This is good stuff. Please share this because, like I said, a lot of people who are fans of your work would love to just sit and listen to you go over this stuff. This is great.
Sure. So let's get back to some other stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So
we were talking about your work. We were talking about your work with Al Jarreau, and you were showing me some of the charts and things that you've done with the vocals.
The vocal splicer, right? Yeah. Okay. Most important, we talk about the E roads before we split. So, let me tell you about Turn Your Love Around real quick.
Okay.
I got a call from Tommy LaPuma at Warner Brothers saying we're recording George Benson's like a greatest hits, but I think it was called The Collection. And Tommy said, I want you to produce it and I want you to find 2 songs or write 2 songs and they'll be singles. So, pick something really good or write something really good. So of course I wanted to write one of the tunes. We found one that was okay. I can't remember the name of it, but so for the one that I wrote, I had 4 days to do this on account of scheduling. So the first 2 days I came up with nothing. I didn't like anything that I was coming up with. So what happened was I was in the bathroom, man, popping a deuce, and I came up with a melody, the chord changes, and the bass line all in my head. So I jumped off the can as fast as I could, ran to a cassette machine down at the piano, and I sang all the parts. Then I played them real quick, and then I went back upstairs, and that was the chorus.
Wait a minute. You got to stop right there. You came up with all of that? The
Yeah.
vocals, everything just like that?
The melody, the chord changes, and the bass line. Immediately.
Ba-do-do-do-do-do.
Da-da-ba-ba-ba-da. Turn your love. I didn't come up with the lyric. That was Bill. Turn your love around, bum, 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 bum,
Yeah.
da, 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 da. So I had the changes
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
in the melody all in my head for the whole
Wow.
chorus. So Lukather was coming over the next night to go out to dinner and with our wives of the time. And I said, Luke, I need a verse for this. And I'm in the middle of something. We're not going to split for another half an hour. So I said, sit at the piano and try to come up with a verse. And so I came back in a half an hour and he had the verse. He had the changes and a great melody. And I tied something in to get to the chorus. So now we've got the verse and the chorus.
Mm-hmm.
Then we went out to dinner. When we got home, I called up Champlin and I said, get over here. We need a bridge and we need a lyric. So we all worked on the bridge together. We got the bridge. Bill took the tune home, wrote the lyric. We banged out a quick little demo. And then the following night, we actually demoed the song up in the studio. So I sent it to Tommy LaPuma and I said, this is the one, man. And he agreed. Wow. So within a week, that was the first tune recorded in this studio, this particular one. And that was it. There's Turn Your Love Around, and there's the second Grammy, thankfully.
Jay, let me ask you something about that real quick. Does an artist know, like if you're working with David, Bill, other writers, do you just know, like, this is a hit? I just know this is a hit. And it's like just what you just said there, like, this is the one. You seem to just have this sense that this is a hit.
Yes, it's memorable. And also the other thing that I know that's going to make it a hit is if the song is quality, the record company is going to really work this song hard to promote that album. So it's twofold. You got to have the song and they've got to love it and they got to want to work it. And it's one of those things that were worked out perfectly. I'd mentioned 2.5 Grammys. Well, when I was working with the Manhattan Transfer, recording the Extensions album, I think it was, whatever one has Birdland on it. I had written Twilight Zone and Twilight Tone with Alan Paul, one of the guys in the group, and we got I'm getting ahead. Janice was working on the arrangement for Birdland, and she was working off the original Weather Report record to try to, get the voicings for the vocals that were done instrumentally. And she couldn't hear the chord changes in a bunch of different sections. They were they were complex and she didn't understand what they were. So she'd come up to me and she'd go, Jay, what are these chords? And me being a chord junkie and studied forever, with chord changes and practiced, ear training forever and still do every day. It's constant work. I said, Janice, those chords are 13 flat 9 chords and they voice like this. I went to the piano, I wrote them out. And then the next day she'd come up to me and she'd go, Jay, I can't figure out what this section is. And I said, this is what it is, Janice. And I wrote it out right away and gave it to her. Then the next day, the same thing. So right before we released the album, she says, do you want arranging credit? And like an idiot, I said no. And we were nominated, Alan and I were nominated for Twilight Zone, and she was nominated for Birdland. Well, wow. She won Best Vocal Arrangement with Birdland. And I could have, kicked myself in the pants, man. I'm going to call Janice and I'm going to say, you know what? I really did help you a lot on that. I want credit, and let's call Norris and see if I can get the Grammy, because it's up to you to okay it. So
that's incredible. I was going to also ask you, I think you should have gotten something for Breaking Away also. I mean, I think that was Al's first Grammy, but you should have gotten something for that.
I got a bunch of, when he won things, I would get the producer award for when he won Best Vocal Pop, Best Vocal Jazz, Best Vocal R&B. I'd get plaques for those. So I was included. And by the way, on the Giro album, that year I had 4 nominations. And 2 of them were for Producer of the Year and Engineer of the Year.
Yeah.
And this was my chance. Well, guess what? Thriller was nominated that year for everything. I didn't have a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
That
was
was
a, I was a, I was a seat filler, bro. Let's talk about the E, man. Is that cool, Preston?
please. Yes.
Okay. David David Foster called me after a session one day and he said, I just played the most incredible Fender Rhodes ever.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, what is it? He says, well, it's Andy Leeds. Andy owned a rental company, and this was the fifth Rhodes he bought. And he happened to find it at Wallach's Music City. I'll get to that in a second. I said, okay, David, since this Rhodes is so great and we're recording the Giro album in a week, I said, I'll book it. How do I know what it is? He says, Andy stenciled an E on it. He used letters instead of numbers. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D, E. So I called up Andy and I said, I want the E for these dates. And it showed up. So while David was playing it and I'm EQing it and setting the levels, I couldn't believe how great this thing sounded. I hit the talk back and I said, David, you are right. I've never heard a Rhodes anywhere close to this. So me being the guy that I am, I told all my keyboard friends about it. And all the keyboard players that worked for me on different sessions would come through and play it and they'd all freak out. And so I made this instrument a star. How can an instrument be a star, right? Okay, here's how it was discovered. Andy Leeds was in Wallach's Music City. He's always looking for instruments to buy, to rent. And he went to the storage room with the salesman. And the storage room was stacked all the way to the ceiling with 2 piles of stuff. Nobody was taking care of inventory properly. And Andy sees this big box at the bottom of the pile. What's that? Salesman says, I don't know. They take all the stuff off the boxes, and it happened to be the E. It was the Fender Rhodes Mark I, 73 keys. Leeds pops it open. They plug it in. It works. He buys it. Okay. It had been sitting there in the box, brand new for 9 years. Brand new. Okay. Then the Rhodes fell out of vogue probably around 1987 when the Yamaha DX7 Rhodes sound took over. There was a patch that everybody started using, including me. So that was it for the Fender Rhodes. Nobody was using them anymore. And a guy named George Mamalakis that lives in Santa Barbara, it was such a fan of the E, he went to Leeds, played the thing, fell in love with it and said, I want to buy it. And George says, I'll give you $3,000. And Leeds wasn't renting it. So Leeds said, fine. George took it home and he basically created a shrine to it. He rarely took it to gigs so it wouldn't get banged up. And he learned he's good with mechanical stuff, and he learned how to maintain it and really keep it tweaked so that the tines and the keys and everything, the pickups were adjusted to the right height. Everything stayed in adjustment. I met George by accident. I was trying to find out, not by accident, I was trying to find out who owned the E. And we talked over the years. And 4.5 years ago, I said, George, we have to sample it. I'm starting to hear Rhodes on records again. It's coming back. So I gave him about 100 pages of technical information. It had to be electronically rebuilt, replacing all the capacitors, everything that you would do to get it normal, like it was brand new. And after we replaced all the parts, then we sampled the thing, and we've got 18 layers of samples for each note. We decided that are the distinct differences of the sound of the keys. So 18 different samples from soft to extremely loud. And I said, George, but before we do the sampling, to do this accurately, you need to build a unit that drops a weight on the key that we can adjust from soft and all the little increments in between up to very loud. And man, he built a tool that's called Vera, V-E-R-A, that's what he named it, that straps onto the Rhodes. I told him it needed a bolt to the Rhodes no matter what, with clamps so it couldn't move. And it was accurate to a 1/4 of a decibel, which is a very finite amount of audio level. And that's how we ended up sampling it. And we got the 18 layers that we needed. And then we found a company to partner with, which is Orange Tree Samples. And I found this guy through a friend. He's a great guy, Greg Schlepfer. And 4.5 years later, as of 6 months, 4 months ago, we've released the E, and we've added all kinds of cool things. It's a true stereo instrument if you want it to be, where
Mm,
all the notes pan across the stereo spectrum, just like a acoustic piano mic'd in stereo would pan.
hmm.
We did all kinds of tricks and stuff that you can add in the advanced page that was never available on any Rhodes ever. It was impossible to do, but we did it because it's electronic and a sampled instrument now. Everybody's freaking out. Everybody loves it. It's selling great. If anybody is interested in hearing demos, go to my website. And as a matter of fact, if you can play the demos that Kirsten sent of her son Stefan playing a bunch of Giro tunes on the E,
I was
that
watching
would
that.
be,
That was beautiful, man. That was great.
please use it. Please
Yeah.
use it because people can hear it. That's my favorite patch that I came up with. There's tons of presets, and that's the go-to patch. When you go there, you go to Jay Graydon presets #1. And man, this instrument is unbelievable. Last thing about it, Harold Rhodes heard about the E over the years. He's the guy that designed it, Harold Rhodes. And he went to George's house in Santa Barbara to play it and listen to it. And he freaked out after he played it and heard it. He says, "This is the most beautiful Rhodes I've ever heard." And
Mm.
George says, "You're not kidding me, right?" Harold says, "I'm serious." And they made 250,000. He probably played 10,000 of them, you
Mm.
know. So it's there for everyone to own. Orange Tree Samples, or go to my site that Preston will stream on the video here, and there's a link to it. Plus, there's demos on my sites and explanations. And believe me, this, if you love Fender Rhodes, this is the one you want.
I have a lot of musician friends who will definitely dig this and want to look into that. But listen, man, I want to thank you so much for being on Jazz Talk. This is just part one. We're going to follow up and do a part two right away. You're a class act, and it's been a pleasure just sitting here listening to these stories. There's just so much to learn. But hang on, I'm about to close out the show. Well, you've heard it from the great Jay Graydon. And as the saying goes, if the music grooves and makes you move, it must be jazz. I'm Preston Williams with Jazz Talk signing off. Peace.